Days after the People's Fury unleashed chaos and conflict on the streets of Sri Lanka, in a bid to control protesters, Sri Lankan authorities have issued a shoot-on-sight order. And this was done on Tuesday to quell any further unrest. Tanks were seen rolling down the streets of Colombo on Wednesday. Thousands of security forces have been deployed to enforce the curfew, which has now been extended till Thursday morning. What this order essentially means is that security forces can shoot on sight anyone either looting public property or seen as causing harm to life. This comes after people disobeyed a nationwide curfew on Tuesday and set buildings and vehicles on fire for the second consecutive day. Monday's violence represents a turning point in the country's ongoing economic crisis. Weeks of peaceful demonstration turned ugly and forced the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa to resign. So far, 9 people died in the unrest, more than 41 vehicles were set ablaze, and at least 136 properties vandalized. Even the homes of the former Prime Minister were not spared. His departure has done little to pacify the public. His brother Gotabaya Rajapaksa remains the president of the country and now wields considerable power, including commanding the security forces. While Mahinda's resignation was intended to pave the way for a unity government, the opposition has indicated that it does not intend to allow Gotabaya to remain in his post. In fact, an SJB member said that the opposition leader Sajid Premdasa will only accept a post of Prime Minister. The SJB had submitted a no-confidence motion against the government and the president last week. Dayasiri Jayasekhara, the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, told WION that while the SLFP is ready to support Sajid Premdasa, his demand that Gotabaya step down as president of the country is not practical. A meeting of the party leaders is scheduled to be held today virtually to discuss the country's volatile situation. An in-person meeting of the leaders was earlier scheduled to be held in Parliament but was cancelled over security concerns. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's neighbour India on Tuesday distanced itself from the Rajapaksa-led government and pledged support to the people of Sri Lanka. The External Affairs Ministry spokesperson said that India was fully supportive of Sri Lanka's democracy and economic recovery. The Indian High Commission in Colombo is busy addressing a flurry of rumours and fake news, the first one being that Mahinda and his family had been flown to India in a helicopter. The second one denying that New Delhi was sending troops to Sri Lanka, saying that such actions were not in line with India's position. Our top focus at this hour remains the crisis in Sri Lanka, in the island nation. As we understand and reports have revealed, Sri Lanka's president is now urging people to reject what he calls attempts to foment racial and religious disharmony. We've seen over the last 2 days violence breaking out in many parts of the country over the government's handling of a devastating economic crisis. Now, for more details, joining us now is our correspondent Dasuni Athara. She joins us from Colombo. Dasuni, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us what's the latest on the streets and what are the people of Sri Lanka demanding at this point from whatever government is in power?
Yes, Priyanka, as of right now, an island-wide curfew is pretty much still in effect. Nevertheless, there are vehicles that are using these roads, most likely those who are involved in essential services. Also, the party leaders' meeting, which was initially called off yesterday, is now set to get underway shortly, within a matter of minutes to be specific. And all eyes will be on the elected representatives who will be participating at this meeting to see what solutions and what outcomes will come about after this meeting, especially chief of them being the formation of an interim government, provided that former Prime Minister has now tendered in his resignation, which means Sri Lanka, as of right now, does not have a Prime Minister along with a functioning cabinet.
Right, let's talk about the future of governance on the island nation as of now. We understand that the opposition leader, Premdasa, has already set conditions for taking over. But the big question is this even a willing opposition? Does the opposition have the required numbers to take over?
Yes, Priyanka, like you said, the opposition leader earlier on in the afternoon did state that he is ready to take up the role of Prime Minister, provided that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa steps down. However, when we did speak to government-allied MPs, they did say that this is, in fact, a very impractical move, provided that in the event the president also steps down, who next is to take up the role of governance in this country, provided then at that point, if the president also steps down, Sri Lanka essentially does not have a president nor a prime minister to be accountable for. So what these MPs were saying was that they will be attending this party leaders meeting, which is now underway, and that they will be pushing for an interim government, and that they would also be extending their full support to Prime Minister, to Sajid Premdasa in the event that he is to be Prime Minister.
Right, Daswani, thanks so much for the latest updates. We'll, of course, keep coming to you for more updates as the Sri Lankan crisis unfolds further. And to discuss more insights into the political crisis in Sri Lanka, joining us live from Colombo is Harsha De Silva, who is a current member of the Sri Lankan Parliament from the main opposition party, the SJB. Mr. De Silva, welcome to WION World is One.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about the current state of governance in Sri Lanka. The opposition leader Sajid Premdasa has already set conditions for accepting the post of Prime Minister. But the question is, does the opposition have the numbers to take over? Is this a willing opposition?
Of course, it is a willing opposition and we have the numbers. There is no doubt about that. But our condition is that the president will have to step down or has to agree to a process of stepping down based on the proposals put forward by the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. They've discussed it with us, they discussed it with the president, and they discussed it with all other independent groups. And in principle, everyone is agreed that on the basis of his stepping down, over a period of time that can be agreed upon, we are ready to take government, but he has to step down. That's the condition. He has to step down.
Right. But sir, amid this crisis, there is also a shoot-on-sight order currently, an island-wide curfew. Many experts have likened Sri Lanka currently to a military state. What's your take?
Well, I saw troops on the road because I'm an MP and we had meetings today. I was able to travel. I have not seen scenes like that in a long time. We've seen military equipment on the road. We've seen soldiers on the road. It looks intimidating, but this is, I hope, a very short-term decision. And they will be removed from the streets no sooner peace, calm is restored.
Right. Just a final question there, Mr. De Silva. The people of Sri Lanka are suffering. The political crisis has, in a sense, eclipsed the economic one. Does the opposition have a plan to tackle the same?
Look, I mean, the economic problem was going to convert itself into a social and political problem. And that was known. And the Rajapaksas didn't listen to these warnings. So now what has happened is, unless we find a way out of the political problem, we cannot begin to even resolve the economic problem. For instance, the IMF agreements cannot go ahead without a Minister of Finance. Without a secretary to the Ministry of Finance, none of whom exist any longer. So unless we resolve the political crisis, have a government, whether it is stable or not, only time will tell, we cannot even begin to address the economics, which is dire, extremely dire. And, we need $84 million this week. Right. And honestly, we don't know where we're going to get it from. It's that bad.
Right. Mr. De Silva, thank you so much for your opinion, and thanks for speaking to us on WION World is One. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.